is that darn Cardi Jew? They're making us ravenous look horrible.
If you've enjoyed this program, please click like and subscribe.
Yehovah, Halakam, Elohim, Nobranan, Amahin, Yusam, Balahin, Yahako.
Baruch Hashem, welcome again to the ben-Emmett channel on YouTube. Where else you gonna find such great Torah material as no other than the Torah Watchman series? Welcome, welcome again. Thank you for coming to my home. I want to share with something, just get something off this Jewish chest, and I'm a little bit, I would say, not so joyful today. Because why? Because another year in a row, I believe a very righteous man, and I'll explain to why I'm saying righteous man, Christopher Columbus, someone I grew up with as a child, who I actually looked up to and thought he was a great adventurer, like the Indiana Jones and that kind of thing. And when I was taught in school, and I'm 55, and I was born in 1965, I grew up in the South, in Louisiana, in the public school system, whatever. In kindergarten and grade school and everything else. By the way, I still know my classmates today, but they're like family to me. 60 to 70% of them were African American in my public school at that time. That's how I grew up, by the way. Just a little tidbit, not germane. What I'm trying to say is the Christopher Columbus I was educated to believe in and taught in history, even in college, as I got older, is not the Christopher Columbus that is constantly criticized and judged and referred to as a white supremacist, referred to as spreading syphilis and his man coming in, raping and pillaging the land and all of this stuff. Don't believe it, folks. Listen, the Torah Watchman would rather die than tell you a lie intentionally, okay? I have material here, and you can go to it too if you'd like to. It's pretty exhaustive. It's Jewish learning, my Jewish learning. I get a lot of my ideas from them, and they have a good, honest, I wouldn't say biased. Of course, they're Jewish scholars and historians, but there's other contributors too. Was Columbus Jewish? And that's another thing I want to point out here. So anyway, you can look up the facts on Christopher Columbus as well as I can do. His maiden voyage to the Americas was in 1492, and he died around 1506, okay? But who was Christopher Columbus? Okay, I watched the History Channel this morning on my way to work. Yeah, I watch it through YouTube, and this little thing in front of my windshield just to keep me awake and alert while I'm watching cars in front of me. That's how you can learn languages and all this. You have long commutes. What are you going to do? But anyway, I wanted to educate myself on that. And I even reported this to my government customer. I reported this to my company and things they did not know about Columbus Day. Columbus Day is a federal holiday since around 1938 or so, I think. FDR, he came up with the idea, let's have a federal paid holiday day off work for honoring Christopher Columbus, the great adventurer of 1492. Okay? So here we are. We have a federal holiday enacted by FDR, a Democrat president, by the way. And he didn't like Jews too well. Anyway, I already have a video about that too. But Christopher Columbus, did you know Columbus Day is an unofficial Jewish holiday? Just like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Memorial Day for him and everything he did, is another unofficial Jewish holiday. Okay? It's someone that we hold in high esteem. Why do Jews, most Jews, if they're observant, Orthodox, or whatever, if they have an ounce of common sense kind of Jew, they look at Christopher Columbus as someone with admiration, okay? And there's been recent historical evidence, too, that's come out of the woodwork, literally, an investigative analysis of Christopher Columbus, that it was not this narcissistic, self-centered tyrant or whatever that came in and forced himself on people's lives and destroyed and maimed and all this other. And 130 cities throughout America, I just read, they replaced Columbus Day with Indigenous People Day. So like if you go to all these liberal cities and liberal states, Oregon, Washington State, California, other places like that, they disregard the federal holiday. They gleefully take the day off. Even my government customer will not say Happy Columbus Day, and they don't say Happy Indigenous People Day because it would be totally ridiculous and absurd they said that. So they just say it's a holiday. Well, I wish everyone in my company, beginning Friday, have a wonderful Columbus holiday weekend. It's a 3-day weekend. And today, I told my customer, I told my company, Happy Columbus Day. Yes, I worked on Columbus Day because I had to make up my time. Anyway, where am I going? Okay. So this is an article by Howard Sakar. Howard Sakar talk about was Columbus Jewish? Okay. First of all, let's get some facts straight. Christopher Columbus was not Italian. Okay. He didn't grow up in Italy. As far as I can tell, he did not grow up in Italy. He actually came from Portugal. He was a Portuguese navigator, okay? Son of a weaver, I believe. Come from very humble beginnings. He was very intelligent man, very gifted. In fact, did you know he could read Greek, Kohen Greek, and read Hebrew? And did you know that he had high regard for the Jewish people in the diaspora? So there's a lot of things that I grew up did not know, but I know now that he was actually a double agent. He was working for the Portuguese government, and he heard about the expulsion of Jews from Spain who had lived there relatively peacefully for 500 years. In 1492, it was the Roman Catholic king and queen, okay? King Fernando and Queen Isabella. Queen Isabella was the neck in the family. You hear more from her side than you hear of Fernando. Maybe he was quiet, maybe he's old, I don't know. Anyway, out of a lot of cajoling and everything else, Christopher Columbus had a story that he was from Italy. And even though he was from Portugal. Very interesting storyline there. Double agent. But anyway, so we heard about the Jews, about 1,000 being exiled. First of all, how do you think the king and queen of Spain at that time in 1492 and the 1400s, whatever, how do you think they came up with all the gold and silver and treasury to be able to fund an expedition across the Atlantic Ocean? At that time, people were thinking were half split between the world being flat and being round. Okay, round. Columbus believed he was not a flat earther; he's a round earther. Today, in this world, we have two types of people: they're flat earthers and they're round earther people. Okay, but anyway, don't want to get too off topic. So Christopher Columbus, he was a master navigator. Okay, he knew about shipbuilding. Okay, at that time, ships were fairly primitive. But anyway, the king and queen of Spain did not have the money up front to fund a massive expedition. They were in competition with Portugal. Portugal was actually an adversary of Spain at that time. Two separate countries. They get along now, anyway. Of course, they were in competition with Great Britain. They were in competition with France. Okay, all for going to India, trying to find a trade route to India because they knew that's where all the expensive spices, stories of gold, tobacco, all kinds of things, cinnamon, wow, I mean, we can get cinnamon very cheap, but back then it was expensive, very expensive. It's a rare commodity. The spice trade. I mean, they actually had someone, I think, before Christopher Columbus actually sailed around South Africa, you know, and to find the Cape of Hope, I believe, around that area to go to find a route to India. A lot of people gave up their lives. I mean, it was dangerous to do this. I mean, people believed there were monsters in the sea and everything else. So Christopher Columbus came to Queen Isabella and said, this is what I want to do. They turned him away. They don't have the money. But at that time, they devised a nefarious plan. Like I said before, in 1492, Columbus sold a ship to the Americas, but also Roman Catholic king and queen in power in Spain possessed all the land, all the property, all the bank accounts of every Jew in Spain that refused to be baptized and converted with the Eucharist and rosary beads and everything else to the Roman Catholic theological, Christological system, okay? Some people lost their lives when they did not want to close the doors of the synagogue, when they didn't want to surrender their prayer books. Many of these sacred Torahs and everything were burned. Jews lost their lives. They were hung. Some people were beheaded. It was horrific. It was absolutely horrific. You hear about the Spanish Inquisition and everything else. Well, there's an Inquisition against the Jewish people, okay? Targeted against the Jewish people because they were Jewish, because they did not want to be baptized in the Roman Catholic way. Within a few years, leading up to 1942, they found the money. Why? They repossessed all the property of Jewish people and kicked them out of the nation, or gave them a writ. You have to leave the country. You have to leave the nation by 30 days or whatever. So Christopher Columbus devised a plan where he would take thousands of these Jews, and I can't remember how many ships. I think it was 3 ships. And the story is that he packed these Jews like sardines in the ships, in the holds where they have cargo and everything else. Packed them up. He said, "Hey, I'm going to a new land. Maybe find the Garden of Eden. Anyway, it's going to be a better place. You can start over, build a new life. Be Jewish if you want to. Baruch Hashem. Don't worry about Spain. You know, I believe in your God." And when I say things like this, I'm going to read a comment here to give you some context. And his ship log when he was sailing to the Americas, Columbus makes frequent references to the Hebrew Bible, to Jerusalem, to Moses, David, Abraham, Isaac, and Sarah. He talks about the matriarchs and patriarchs. He computes the age of the world according to the Jewish calendar. So he had respect for our Hebrew calendar system. We just have Rosh Hashanah, which is the head of the new year. And the destruction of the Second Temple, according to the Jews, to be to the present day, being the year of the birth of our Lord, 1481, 1413 years. The Lord is the king or the dynasty, whatever that time. In his last will and testament, Columbus asked that 1/10 of his income be given to the poor, that a dowry be provided for poor girls in such a way they do not notice where it comes, so anonymously giving. All of these things I just described to you is typical of a Jewish mind, especially in the 14th century. Okay? Now, hindsight is 2020. In the 21st century, we think we are evolved more than the Middle Ages, right? So Christopher Columbus it's easy to look down on someone in the 14th century, in the Middle Ages, as someone who's barbaric, compared to our sensibilities of today in the 21st century, because we are educated. We have college degrees, we have PhDs. I mean, a lot of socialists in our country think they should own our children. They should tell us how we should educate our kids. They tell us if our synagogue can be open or closed, tell us how to worship, tell us if we can have a minyan. Look what's going on in New York City right now, okay? I already did a video about how the Agadah have been targeted by the liberal establishment there. So Christopher Columbus is regarded by the Jewish people today as one of our own. Okay? There's even enough evidence to say, supportive evidence, that he came from a Jewish ancestry. Maybe his grandparents were Jewish, and then he was a mixed Jewish heritage, okay? He was Portuguese, okay? And many people during that time had to hide their Jewish identity to be able to have even one business transaction. I already told you that Christopher Columbus may have not even been his real name. He probably had a Portuguese name. But anyway, he had to approach the Catholic system, the Catholic dynasty, monarchy there, in a position that they did not guess who his real identity was. So he was Portuguese, much less being Jewish, okay? Or I told you about the great expulsion of Jews in 1492 by the Roman Catholic Church in Spain. So here we have Christopher Columbus. He's known as the Admiral of the Sea. He was an adventurer. He invested a lot of his own money, whatever, in this trip. This is a huge risky endeavor because no ship has ever, since the Viking 500 years ago, it's easier to sail from Iceland to Newfoundland than to sail from Spain to Cuba, okay? Consider the sacrifices that went into that, okay? And sailboats, you have hurricanes, you have storms, you got sea monsters, you got, all the diseases and everything else you can get on the voyage. People get seasick. You get scurvy, vitamin C and all this other stuff. All these things that can happen, okay? What you're going to do is get sick and you're in a serious situation and you're weeks and weeks and weeks from dry land. And about fresh water. I mean, you can't drink seawater. So you consider what was going on in the 14th century. To even think about embarking on a journey from Spain and Europe all the way to the Americas. And I say Americas, I'm not talking about the United States. I'm not even talking about North America. When I say Americas, I'm talking about Cuba. I'm talking about the Virgin Islands, St. Croix, Haiti, Jamaica, all these islands there. That's what he discovered initially. And he was thinking that he was that the world was much smaller in diameter. He knew it was round. At least he thought so. He thought he was sailing all the way to the other side of the world, to India. That's what he was hoping. So the land he discovered was not the land he thought. But anyway, Cuba, the name of the island of Cuba today that's off of our coast in the United States. I used to work in Guantanamo, by the way. But anyway, Cuba, there's a city in Portugal named Cuba. Many of the names of the adjacent islands in the Caribbean there, they're names of those nation islands, those cities and things, were taken from cities that were close to Cuba and Portugal. Cuba, Portugal actually has a plaque there, and it has a lot of detailed historical information about who Christopher Columbus really was. But what I want to tell you here is that Jewish astronomers went along with him. You need someone to navigate the stars to be able to know where you're going, right? What if the moon wasn't near you? And since Columbus understood the Hebrew calendar, he could predict the lunar phases when it was, okay? But he had sextant and other things like that, where you could look at the stars and find out where your true north was and where you were going. What are you going to do if it's cloudy? What are you going to do? You consider all the things he went through, okay? So, again, in 1492, when all the Jews were expelled, some of them found a home in Columbus's maiden voyage to the Americas. And they settled in these islands in Cuba, Puerto Rico, Haiti, Jamaica, Virgin Islands, and all these islands. And to this day, Ancestry.com has revealed, and to people's not so great surprise, that they are Jewish ancestors from this trip. Now, a lot of the criticism, let me address this, the criticisms of Christopher Columbus, why they want to do away with that holiday and replace it with indigenous people. Okay, first of all, there's no such thing as indigenous people in America. I want to repeat that. There's no such thing by the literal definition of that word, indigenous people in America. Why did I say that? Okay? My sixth great-grandfather was a Cherokee Nation chief. I checked his migration path. Did you know he came originally where the Mayans used to live and and Brazil and South America and Colombia. I have connections there, ancestral connections to Colombia, even in Mexico. This is this migration path. What I'm saying is American Indians, the Soy, the Sioux, the Cherokee Nation, all the other Indian tribes, as we know them today, what's left of them anyway, they traveled either through South America in that area to North America, the United States, where it is today. And the Eskimos are actually another type of Indian people. They came from Siberia when the Bering Strait was actually a bridge, a land bridge between Russia. Yes, you can see Russia from your back door in Alaska. There was a land bridge there thousands of years ago. So these people traveled and migrated to new greener pastures. Okay, so they came from somewhere else. There's no such thing as indigenous people in the United States. As far as the people being in the islands, okay, they didn't sprout up like in a cabbage patch. Okay, these people sailed ships and little boats or whatever from Latin America, from South America, and that's where a lot of the people were. Okay, eventually, the South America, I'm sorry for the geography lesson and giving context, eventually all the people in South America, the Mayans, the Aztecs, all the other Indian people, they don't, there's no Aztecs anymore. But these people eventually came to that land bridge through Alaska, along the west coast of the United States, all the way down, to Canada and that area, all the way down, okay? And they spread out to the islands. Okay, when you have drought, when you have war, when you have disease and pestilence, all this, it forces a large migration of people if you want to survive. Okay, the human species is very resilient for that. So anyway, I'm trying to say how these people came about. Now, Christopher Columbus, his voyages ended at 1506. He sailed the ship, maiden voyage, 1492, when the Jews were expelled from Spain. He had 4 voyages in all, okay? He was trying to do different things to try to find gold and spices and things to justify the business case of his trip. And again, remember, all the funding of these voyages were at the expense of the Jewish people at the hands of the Roman Catholic king and queen. And Christopher Columbus, when he got to, say, Cuba or got to Haiti or Jamaica and those islands there, he was under strict orders by the king and queen. You are to do this, you're not to do this. Okay, he was given some autonomy since he was the commander of this fleet, this journey here, the naval voyage. But as far as we have evidence that he took servants of people there, natives there, okay? And some people call that indentured servitude as slaves. The thing is, the king and queen in Spain never saw a native from the Indies before. It's just like if we went to Mars and we found alien life, don't you think the astronauts, the government would ask the astronauts to bring back a sample of those alien people so we can see if they're really true? If they have 2 eyes and a nose and 2 ears and mouth, and maybe a beard? Yes, that's what it was interest, okay? They brought people back. And who knows? I wasn't there with the conversations. Christopher Columbus could have offered them a barter, a bargaining, a thing like that. These people, who knows? Who knows what was going on in their life there? Maybe they had a tribal fight or whatever that's going on. And more than likely, the people there that were in power sold the other people that were not in power to Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus did not go with muskets and guns and swords on horses and go through and cut down all the trees and vegetation and forests and everything and steal people and commit human trafficking and atrocities, like the liberals say he did, okay? That's why his statue has been beheaded in America. That's why his statue has been knocked into lakes. That's why his statue in Mexico had graffiti all over it. And even the Mexican president so stupidly is demanding of the Vatican to apologize to him for the invasion of the Spanish navigators and conquistadors and everyone coming there. Did you know that 90% of Mexico pretty much was founded by Spain? These islands, St. Croix, Virgin Islands, they were just sparsely populated by any people. They're populated with a lot of people today because of Europeans coming here. Okay? Again, hindsight is 2020, and nothing looks fair when you look back on those people. But understand in context, the people that did the real atrocities against the native people in the Virgin Islands, the Caribbean, Mexico, all this, were the Spaniards that came in after Columbus was dead in 1506. Don't blame Columbus for things that happened after that. Okay? Human expansion, when the areas are too overpopulated and you have disease and all of that, human beings want to go to Mars. People want to explore the oceans and everything else, the Antarctic and all these places. We still want to explore, and sometimes people get in the way, unfortunately, and people die. That's just what happened. Don't judge a man who's not here to represent himself anymore. And in Jewish context, it is akin to murder when you destroy someone's reputation, especially someone who is dead, who is maybe Jewish too. It is wrong, okay? And if you're Jewish out there and you're supporting these libertards in America to taking down Christopher Columbus statue and talking about Indigenous Peoples Day, whatever that is, the Jews are more indigenous in Israel than the American Indians, okay? Because we were in Israel since 4,000 years ago. We had governance in Israel 3,500 years ago, okay? Okay, that's a long time. There's no more Canaanites there, okay? We conquered them. So you look at yin and yang, if this is equal, this must be true. Christopher Columbus was not an evil man. He wasn't a white supremacist. Even Jews like me that are Caucasian is called a white supremacist because I'm a white face and my face is not colored. Well, folks, there are Sephardic Jews that are colored, okay? There are people with Arabic descent, Egyptian descent, Turkish descent. Their faces aren't as white as my face is, okay? I have some Scandinavian blood in me. I'm sorry about that. I also have Kenyan blood in me too. Did you know that? Okay? You cannot judge a book by its cover. Christopher Columbus was a great adventurer in his time. He did almost the impossible. He accomplished a lot. And look at the benefit of the islands in the Caribbean today. They are tourist attractions around the world. They have industry. They have growth. They can feed their people now. Okay? Mexico is Mexico. I mean, it has a socialist, if not communist government, and is dominated by gangs and everything else, and all kinds of illegal drug trafficking and all this. And drug trafficking is in that area too, in the Caribbean. What I'm saying is that Christopher Columbus is not guilty for bringing the Aztec Indians culture to a demise. Okay? Christopher Columbus didn't go out and kill Mayans. Okay? He didn't go out and kill natives. He didn't go out and rape women. He didn't spread syphilis to those people. And his men didn't spread syphilis because recent fossil evidence has revealed that syphilis was nowhere in the area of Christopher Columbus in Europe during that time. It's way up north, by the way. Not during 1492. Okay? So there's a lot of apologizing we should do today, especially as Americans, for destroying the blessed memory of Christopher Columbus, who more than likely was either from a distant Jewish ancestry or at the very least a Noahide, a righteous man, a Mitch, who saved thousands of Jewish lives in 1492. And that's all that you have to say that it's on the Torah Watchman Show. So whether Christopher Columbus was really called Christopher Columbus, whether he was Jewish or not, the history is facts. I'm talking about facts versus fiction, emotionalism versus logical deduction. He's not what the liberals portray him to be today. Okay? Never talk about a man like that when you don't have all the facts. You can judge Hitler all you want to. I mean, you know what the guy was and what he is. There's a lot of evil people that have been born in Earth's history. Christopher Columbus was not that, okay? He sacrificed his life to discover the new world. And the Vikings, yes, supposedly 500 years ago, came to Newfoundland and actually discovered North America. They supposedly had a settlement, but it didn't persist. If you discover something, supposedly, by stories or legend, and you have a settlement and it doesn't exist and it persists, How do you know they really discovered the first one? And we don't have concrete evidence that they were the first 500 years ago. It's believed, we have some evidence of that. The point is that Christopher Columbus led the way for Europe to expand their colonization to the United States, eventually settling the 13 colonies in America and Great Britain. He also improved shipbuilding and shipworthiness over the high seas. Baruch Hashem, whatever it is. Listen, this Jew will always think of Christopher Columbus in the most righteous of ways. I will always think of him during Columbus Day. And if our country is so stupid that it goes to politically correct left and changes this holiday, I will be very disappointed and I will vote him out of office. Anyway, subscribe. Show me if you like or hate this video. Leave your comments. Listen, God love you. God bless you. I'm here to educate. Educate. There's a lot of ignorance in the world, okay? I try not to be ignorant by reading books.